Greetings, this is a very strange Aeon. Welcome to my video. Okay, so starting with my in no way biased opinion, the best class, Mesmer. Mesmer is a class that revolves around utility, manipulation, illusion, and general confusion. It makes use of a mechanic called clones. Clones are created via the use of various abilities. They create a replica for you, which, if targeted in PvP or World v World, will have the same name and appearance as you. They will form basic attacks and generally not do much offensively, but they can be a distraction and confusion. You can then shatter these clones for varying effects, such as direct damage, causing condition damage, or just making yourself invulnerable for a few seconds. Mesmers also have access to phantasms, similar but not the same to clones. Phantasms look like slightly ghostly versions of you that perform special attacks. A large amount of your high damage abilities utilize phantasms. Phantasms turn into clones when they're done their attack, so these two mechanics are kind of connected. Mesmer have to be very reactive with their defensive mechanisms, being quite squishy inherently, but having a large amount of confusions and immunities, as well as just outright blocks to keep themselves alive. If you're the sort of player to whom screwing with your enemy is almost as important as winning, or you just like to have tons of things in your toolkits and utility, Mesmer is probably for you. So let's go through the specialization for Mesmer. Mirage. Mirage is the Path of Fire specialization for Mesmer. It loses access to its conventional dodge and instead gains something called Mirage Cloak. This causes it to become invulnerable for a small amount of time, but doesn't cause it to move, so it can continue doing whatever actions it's doing while it is undertaking this dodge. This, in turn, is interconnected with an aggressive mechanic known as Ambush. After you Mirage Cloak, your basic attack will become a special attack based on your weapon, doing a variety of things, but generally being quite useful and powerful. This means that Mirage interlinks its offense and defensive capacities very closely. You tend to be doing both simultaneously rather than flicking between defending and attacking. Of all the Mesmer's subtypes, Mirage is the most built around disorientation and confusion. It has access to clones as well as extra teleportations, movement abilities, and the ability to randomly flip between its clones. As such, if the disorientating mechanics of Mesmer appeal to you, Mirage is a pretty good place to look. That said, many people find its altered dodge mechanic to be very unintuitive. I personally have grown quite used to it, but if you've grown very used to the more conventional dodging, it takes a bit of time to get used to. Mirage grants access to Axe, a condition-oriented melee weapon with the ability to disorientate and teleport around. Virtuoso is the End of Dragon specialization for Mesmer. In some ways, the complete opposite of Mirage. Virtuoso loses access to its clone abilities, instead gaining Blades. Blades can stack up to 5 as opposed to 3, and they stack up outside of combat, meaning you could open with a full shatter, whereas most Mesmers have to build up to it. The shatters can also be more powerful and are in a slightly altered form. The Virtuoso loses out a large amount of the disorientation and defensive capacities of most Mesmers in exchange for pure burst damage. Virtuosos at time of making this video are one of the most dangerous burst characters in the game, and some that you need to be very cautious about if you see them. Virtuosos are also very shatter-orientated. Unlike clones, blades serve no use just sitting over your head, and as such they are purely utilized to do your combos. Do be aware they are also probably the most vulnerable and difficult to survive of Mesmers, having to rely entirely on blocks, guards, and eye guess to keep themselves alive. I would recommend Virtuoso for those who find the disorientation and confusion mechanics of Mesmer unnecessarily unintuitive and prefer just pure killing capacity. Virtuoso grants access to Dagger, a ranged power weapon by default that interacts with your blade mechanic, although it can become condition damage orientated with the right spec. Chronomancer. You may have noticed for Mesmer I didn't start with the Path of Thorns expansion. This was intentional. I feel it is better to talk about Chronomancer after talking about the other two. I would say Chronomancer is in a bit of an odd space at the moment. Historically, it was defined as being the best buff bot in the game, being able to provide alacrity and quickness more reliably than anyone else. But as the game has developed, that ability has been shifted onto other characters, and it is no longer the premier buffer. As such, Chronomancer has a bit of an identity crisis, not really being too clear on what it is supposed to be doing compared to the other two. I would say these days it plays most like the conventional Mesmer. If what I've suggested about the other two, the alteration in the dodge mechanics or the complete loss of your clones, are unappealing, but you still like Mesmer as a core class, I would say to look at Chronomancer. It has alterations, it has its own stuff, it has its own capacities, it can do some cooldown manipulation, that sort of thing, but at its core it does play the closest to the more conventional Mesmer. One thing that is a bit more unique for Chronomancer is, of the Mesmers, it is the one character who can best play a support and healing-oriented build, especially if you pick up Rifle. At least at time of writing, healing builds on the other two classes are rare to impossible. Chronomancer grants access to shield, like basically all shields in the game, a defensive-oriented piece of kit, with blocks, buffs, and debuffs. So that's it for Mesmer. Hopefully you're now going to join in the no way biased best class in the game experience. I hope to see you then.